What was the most statistically unlikely event you've witnessed? I was watching America's Funniest Home Videos back when Bob Saget hosted. While eating pretzels and drinking Diet Black Cherry Soda, Saget led into the commercial break by saying, "Don't put down those pretzels and Diet Black Cherry Soda. We'll be right back." I almost choked. I was adopted. I've known pretty much my whole life. But my parents never really talked about considering my birth father was unknown, and my mother was a meth addict and frequent user while pregnant with me and someone else. Fast forward to when I was 16. My parents decide I'm finally old enough to find out more about my birth mother, and the fact that I actually have a twin brother I never knew about. My parents gave me his name and I immediately went to my computer to try to find him on Facebook. When I logged in, there was message and a friend request from my twin. It turns out his parents told him about me on the same day. We both asked and neither of our parents planned to do this on the same day. This wasn't even our birthday. Just some random day 3 or 4 months after turning 16. In addition, our similarities were insane. We both had long hair at the time, we are both male, had the same favorite band and both had a best friend named Matthew. We still have yet to meet in person, because he's in Texas, and I'm in Alaska. But we are planning on meeting this April. Back in about 2006 I went to Staples to get school supplies for college. I also bought a phone. I picked one that had some speed dials and looked okay. Some guy came over and tried to pitch me a warranty plan that I passed on. I paid for stuff and left. I got home, and a few hours later I opened my room at assignment and used my new phone to call him. We chatted for a minute, and I said I just bought the phone I was calling him on. Silence. Is it an AT&T 2130? Yeah. Did you buy it at Staples in West Lebanon? Yeah. Dude, I just sold you your phone. This gets better. A few months later we are at school and we were talking about Boy Scouts. He asked if I was in the Order of the Arrow. I said yes. Do you have your membership card? Yeah. Right here in my wallet. Look at the signature of the treasurer. It was him. I had been carrying the signature of my future roommate in my wallet for like 6 years. Was in the car with my father going to Cape Cod. A car had been driving alongside us/near us since a hometown. When we got to the Cape, the car followed us to the house we were staying at, then pulled into the very next driveway. Turns out our neighbors rented the B&B next to us with no planning whatsoever. About 15 years ago, I was on a plane in America. I sat down next to a girl about my age. We started chatting. Just idle travel chit chat. She was an Australian, and I'm a naturalized Australian. I still speak with a Canadian accent. I mentioned that I'm actually from Australia too. She was surprised, and I asked her where she was from. She told me it was so and so away from Sydney. I told her to try me. She mentioned a region, and I told her I was pretty familiar with it, as I'd lived in a town from that area. She told me the town name, it's a coastal town. See, I asked her what beach she lived nearest to. It's how people identify in that place. She said the beach name. I told her that's my beach too. I asked what street it was. She lived 3 doors down from where I lived. I knew a few of her siblings, but had just never actually met her. Playing Risk. I had 40 armies in Greenland. My sister had 6 armies in Iceland. I attacked. I lost. Playing darts with a friend in the summer. Friend throws dart, hits a honeybee in midair, and skewers it to the dartboard. And I crap you not, it was a bullseye. About 11 years ago I had dropped out of college due to being a lifelong non-academic. My best friend's at the time girlfriend helped me get a job at a government-run liquor store in the next town over. It's retail but it paid well and had the opportunity for benefits and had a union, so I was on board. My best friend and I also frequented the gym together in our hometown. One day while working out someone broke into my buddy's locker and stole wallet. A few weeks later his girlfriend and I were both working at checkout when I hear her say, "Oh wow, you look different tonight." I turn around to see a nervous kid reply, "UHHEA, it's just an old photo." Bud is GFMMMM nope. This isn't you. Kid haha yes it is. Why wouldn't it be me? GF this is my boyfriend's ID. His wallet was stolen last month and this card was in it. I took a look at the kid and realized I recognized him from a minor hockey team back in our town. We were all Canadian rink rats, and he was 3 or 4 years younger than me. Long story short, my buddy got all his stuff back. We didn't bother getting the police involved because sometimes kids just do dumb crap, and we ended up having a laugh about it. Went on holiday abroad, walking round a market, turn the corner and physically bump into a guy. He looks up, and it's the guy I was best friends with all through school. I met a woman in a remote mountain village in the Philippines that I had hiked to for a local celebration. Her, my brother and I were the only foreigners there. We made small talk, yada yada. We were Australian backpackers, and she was an American journalist doing work. And that was that. About 2 months later I was walking into Chiang Mai Zoo in Thailand, and as I was walking in, she was walking out. We made that wait, what? Face at each other, and stopped for a chat. It was absolutely bizarre. I scored a 10/10ths in a true or false test, where I didn't know the answer to even a single question. The chances of that happening is 1 in 1024. When I was a kid I was on the beach with my family and a family friend. Said friend realized that he'd lost his wedding ring, presumably while swimming in the sea at some point earlier that day. I decided to head out with my snorkel to have a look, and after only a few minutes spotted the wedding ring half buried in the sand, in about a meter depth of water. It still blows my mind that I found that ring. I've posted this before on here, but I once saw a guy try to kick a football, miss and instead kick a pigeon into a nearby girl, spilling her McDonald's milkshake all down here. I mean, I don't know how statistically improbable that is, but any chance I get to tell the story I'll use. My dad is a personal injury attorney, aka ambulance chaser. One time when my dad was driving me to school, we got into a car accident where the car behind us caused 3 cars to be pushed into each other fender bender style. Everyone gets out to exchange information and realize the guy not only hit my dad, aka the personal injury attorney, but the driver was also responsible for the car being pushed into the 2 other guys who were an insurance adjuster and a chiropractor. Everyone made sure to exchange business cards. At a party a few years ago, about 30 people or so, I overheard a vague acquaintance talking to a woman I didn't know about that. If more than 23 people are in a room, chances are 2 will share a birthday factoid. She asked him his birthday, which I didn't know. He said March 18th. She freaked and said mine too. But this is where it gets weird. My birthday is March 18th too. So I told them, and we all lost it slightly. Another woman came to ask us what the fuss was all about. We explained and she practically fell over. Yep, she was March 18th too. I'm not up to the maths, but I'd love to know how unlikely that was. A lightning strike right behind my car. It sounded and felt like the back of my car exploded. A few days ago, I was at the airport with my father waiting to pick up my mother. All was pretty much well. She passed immigration and grabbed her bag quickly, and we left for the 1-hour trip back to my house. About 30 minutes in, my mom gets a call from the AirAsia office. The person over the phone is insisting she has the wrong bag, but my mother refuses to believe it. She begins to get a little irritated, and then goes to open up the bag. The bag has a lock, which she promptly opens with her key quite easily. I just opened my bag. Yes, it is my bag. I just opened the lock. She then opens the bag fully, to discover a pack of cigarettes and long stockings. My mom isn't a smoker. Never mind. I got the wrong bag. Sorry, where can I meet you? The person she mixed up with had the same model of bag, the same lock, the same key cut, and was also on the same flight as her. What are the chances? My wife lost her wedding ring. We thought that maybe she left it in a restaurant when washing her hands, and it was stolen. After a year and a half of it missing, we were moving across the Atlantic and hoped it might show up when we cleaned our house out. No luck. It was gone forever, we thought. When we got to our new house, one of the movers brought my wife her engagement ring. He found it in the living room rug. A rug that we walked on almost every day since it had been missing. That we vacuumed at least once a week. That got rolled up and shipped across the Atlantic. A few minutes later he found her wedding band in the same rug. When I was 14, Traveling home from school by train, you had two options. You could either walk further to one train station to get a fast train home, or you could take a shorter walk, but the train from that station would be slower. There wasn't much difference in the overall journey time, so kids used to choose which option based on who they were with. The two stations were on the same line and they ended up at the same station. I went to the same school as my twin brother. One day, I chose to take the longer walk, but faster train option. This fast train flew past the slow train station at around 80 miles per hour. Being the renegade I decided to throw some chewing gum I had been chewing out of the window as we hurtled past the slow train station. At 80 miles per hour, this was not targeted to any members of the blurred platform I could see. Thought nothing of it. 2 days later, my twin brother said some C-care threw a chewing gum out of the window of a fast train going past and it hit me in the forehead. We did the train timetable correlation. Unless there was someone else on my train throwing chewing gum out of the window at the same time as I did, it was me who sniped my twin brother. In the 5th grade, I threw a paper airplane that sailed across the room and stuck in between a boy I liked 2 front teeth. It was amazing. We were playing a game of Monopoly. Someone threw the dice, and one of them landed on its edge. Perfectly balanced. No joke. 2 royal flushes in the same week at the casino. A teacup fell down from my hand. Landed perfectly standing. Tea surface made a very unusual vertical splash that reached the ceiling. 4 meters high. There is a mark on the ceiling to this day. A meteorite that was big enough to light up the area like daylight. My father dying from 1 in a million side effects of an experimental arthritis treatment. It literally tore through his lungs in the span of 2 years, leaving him literally breathless until he died from it on a hospital bed Christmas Eve morning when I was 19. Was at a shop counter in Wisconsin, and some dude came up behind me and kicked me in the butt, gently, thinking I was his niece or something. Apologized profusely, went on our separate ways. A few weeks later, I'm at an airport in Houston. I hear a man behind me talking about how he accidentally kicked some poor girl in the butt. I turn around, and there's a long moment of staring at each other before I decide to walk away. Dude probably crap his pants. I once saw somebody actually slip on a banana peel. I was at a poker table where one guy got pocket kings 4 hands in a row. Someone looked up the stat, and it was astronomical. Does being a statistic count? I'm one of only 300 people in medical history to have had a specific congenital mutation/defect. My father finding his lost wedding ring that was lost in a lake after 9 years. For whatever reason he took it off when fishing and landed in the water near the shore. I was fishing with him the same place years later, and he looks down, and boom, there it was. The inscription on the inside of the band told us it was his. Only reason we found it was because it was the height of summer, the water levels had dropped, so the water line was further out. Would have called bullcrap if I hadn't been there. Bought a used car. Driving it home, it started to rain heavily. Started singing Weather With You by Crowded House to myself. Decided to see if anything was in the CD player. Switched it on. Starts playing Weather With You. The previous owner had left Crowded House's greatest hits in the drive. To prank my dad, when we were golfing, my brother and I replaced his golf ball with a weighted ball that rolls to the right pretty heavily. He had a roughly 30-foot putt. He hits it, and was way off with his aim. But due to the weighted roll he makes it, freaks out, and starts celebrating. While my brother and I stand there dumbfounded. Needless to say, my dad isn't good at golf. I've told this before, but back in the day my mom had an SUV with a sunroof. We were going to dinner, and my mom and grandmother were in the front, while I sat in the back seat. We were doing about 70 miles per hour down the freeway, when all of a sudden I get hit in the shoulder by something. A bird had crabbed, and like a laser-guided missile, it found its way to our moving car, through the sunroof, and hit me in the square in the left shoulder. My mom was laughing so hard that she had to pull off the road to compose herself. My cousin was showing me his tarot card deck, 52 cards, and gave his own reading with 5 or so cards. After, he shuffled the deck really well, and pulled the same 5 cards for me. England winning on penalties. I was traveling in South America with my family some years ago, and we meet this super friendly Canadian guy at the hostel we are living in. This is in Peru, but unfortunately we have to leave for a guided tour in the Amazon. Fast forward a month and in Ecuador, a new country, we are enjoying our last days on our trip at cafe, and just at the table beside us the same Canadian guy is sitting. A German shepherd was chasing me down the street trying to attack me, and a split second after I screamed "no" at the dog in desperation, a truck swerved out of their lane and killed the dog on impact. Edit. Typo. My mom and stepdad had my brother on August 9th, 1995. My dad and his girlfriend had their daughter, my sister, on August 9th, 1995. So I have a brother and sister with the exact same birthday, and they are not related. I got a chance to do a very lucrative contract in another country. It was using a computer language I didn't know, Perl. So I bought a textbook and planned to study it on the plane on the way over. So, after we'd taken off and had our meal, I decided to start reading the book. I opened it up, and the first chapter was called Peril from 35,000 feet. I once saw a plane crash into the ocean while we were in a storm with our boat. Looked just like in the movies. Not sure if anyone survived. It looked crazy. Biggest explosion I've ever seen. Followed by the immediate shock that people have died. But the storm was so heavy that we couldn't really think about it. When Randy Johnson threw a pitch in a game and demolished a bird that was flying by right at that exact moment, it exploded. I used to visit my grandma's town a lot when I was younger, and I would frequently wander off to the nearby countryside when bored. Also living in the area was a kid about my age who was extremely mentally unstable. From a rough family that couldn't be bothered to take proper care of him. I didn't care much for him, but I didn't antagonize him either, not that it mattered to him. He came this close to killing me, and only because of sheer dumb luck. He failed. I was wandering down the alleyways that trail back to my grandma's house, and it was quite breezy. I slow down and look up at the sky, just catching the wind and daydreaming for a moment, and then I hear a clatter in front of me. I look down and see a rock on the floor. Curious, I crane my head down a little to look closer at it. Another clatter as a second rock falls near the first, clearly having arced overhead. I quickly spin around and see the other kid standing there, and quickly dash home. Both times, this kid had thrown a heavy looking rock directly towards my head, seemingly very accurately, but I picked those two exact moments to slightly change my movement and cause them to miss. I then quickly realized that it wasn't all breeze, there were also distinct whooshes as soon as both rocks flew by my head, signifying just how close they were to either hospitalizing or killing me had I not stopped or bent down for a split second both times. Went to grocery store, hit a bird on the way there, and hit another bird in the same spot on my way home. I know, I couldn't believe it either. Was flipping a quarter, had a Mississippi mud jar as my coin jar, flipped it from 2 feet away, and landed directly in the hole. Also went mini golf with my then BF, now husband. My ball hits his, does a weird loop around some obstacles, and get in the hole. Hole in one. Happened 3 times on separate occasions. Later on we bought some kites. I strategically sawed off his kite string with my kite string. We don't mini golf or fly kites together anymore. I once saw 2 bald eagles death spiraling. It's when 2 eagles decide they want to mate, they interlock claws and spiral towards the ground at a high rate of speed, only to let go at the last possible second. Devil worshippers or witches dancing round a fire in a graveyard, naked in Dundee in Scotland. May have been a homeless nudist party. I spotted a kiwi in the wild myself. The New England Patriots trailed 28-3 with 2:12 left in the third quarter in a Super Bowl and won. Can someone tell me what the odds are that a tree would fall on my car on a sunny, wind-free day while I was driving it? Like I was in motion. This big ass tree saw me, went frick this bitch in particular and totaled my poor car. I was somehow fine. This happened literally a few months ago back in November. My buddies and I were driving back to campus from DC while we had HQ on our phones. We came back from buying some weed, and we literally hear the announcer say, "For those of you in the car driving back from DC getting that good stuff, we..." We all just simultaneously went. Here's just a funny one I have. One time I was in the high school gym alone, ready for phys ed class to begin, just kind of messing around with a basketball. I'm decently far away from the basket. I don't remember where exactly, but probably farther than I could usually throw and get the ball in the net. I suck at sports in general, so basketball was no exception. I decided I was going to do something cool for fun. So I turned around and threw the basketball behind me as hard as I could. Then I turned around just in time to see the ball go perfectly through the Hoppen net. I couldn't believe I did it, and I looked around to see if anyone else had seen such a jaw-dropping event, and nobody was there, not even the teacher. Just a second later, several of my classmates started filtering out of the change room. How disappointing. Also, I'm sure everyone remembers when the whole water bottle flipping trend was big. Anyway, I remember going to throw some empty water bottles in my recycling bin, but one of the bottles still had some water in it. I tried once or twice to get it to land correctly in the recycling bin, but I got fed up quick. So I hucked the water bottle at my fence, which bounced off, hit the rim of the recycling bin, and landed perfectly upright in the bin. That was pretty cool, but again, no witnesses. In Pokemon Ruby I saw a berry bush progress to the next stage. I was holding a grasshopper and decided to release it by chucking it into the air to fly away. It flew up towards a tree and a bird swooped out of nowhere and ate it mid-flight. I went clubbing and paid with my credit card. The bartender forgot to return my card, and I was too wasted to care at that point to care. Fast forward few months later, I got to know someone online and we went on a date. Then realized we were at the club on the same day. She took out a credit card with my name because the bartender gave her back the wrong card when she bought drinks at the bar that night. A bird freaking shat on me, Pinky. Me and 5 other kids were standing in a circle chatting about Pokemon or whatever, and one of them was eating chips and he wouldn't share. Then as he was taking one from the bag to his mouth, a pigeon crapped right on top of it, and he took that bite. I moved and got a new phone number. I started getting phone calls from creditors saying I owed money. Other calls came in giving me crap for other stuff. Got a call from Amex, and they said I owed a fortune. I denied it and went over my account with them. They said it was a different account. Finally got a call from a woman who was sobbing because her mom died, and could she talk to my wife? Well, I was single. How did she get this number? She'd had it for years. The guy who had my phone number had the same first and last name as I do. As a kid we used to drive to Italy a lot. Most of the times we were going to the same city because we loved it there. We became friends with the restaurant owner and visited like every year for about 10 years. Sadly, he passed away because of cancer. About 15 years later we returned to that city, and right in front of the restaurant a little kid is stumbling away from its mother. The mother calls the kid by the exact, unpopular name the restaurant owner had. My brother and me were paralyzed. So back in the early 80s my brother had this band. They would play in the clubs in North Jersey and New York City. I would go along, pretending to be their roadie. I say pretending, because I'd basically just carry their crap in from the van. But it got me in the clubs for free where I could get wasted, hit on girls, and say I'm with the band. They had this gig at CBGB's in New York one night. It was late fall, early winter. I remember that because I was wearing this blue bomber jacket that were all the rage at the time. Anyways, if you've ever been to CBGB's you would know that it was a crap hole of a club, dark and dirty, in the Bowery, which, at the time, was a not so nice area of the city. The band played the gig. I got hammered and hit on girls, and we packed up and left. I vaguely remember it as being a fun night. By the time we made it through the tunnel back to Jersey, I realized I had left my blue nylon bomber jacket at the club. There was no way we were going to go back there at 3 AM to go get it, so basically I just chalked it up as gone. Fast forward a year. I don't recall now if I was going to CBGB's for another gig of my brother's band, or if I was going there to see a different band. I'm in the club, hanging out. It's all dark, dirty and full of people. I take a seat on a wall bench, which are like church pews attached to the wall. I throw my cigarette down on the floor to stomp it out, and while looking down, I notice this dirty dark blue crumpled up ball of nylon stuffed under the bench. I'm thinking, no freaking way. I pull it out, and sure as crap, a year later, my blue bomber jacket, filthy, crumpled and torn, was under that bench. Even had the half pack of Newports still in the pocket. CBGB's held about 300 people, and after a year's worth of crazy ass punk shows and other misfit bands, my jacket was still there. What are the odds? Was listening to a podcast while going through my mail. There was a letter addressed to a man who didn't live at my house. A basic return to sender situation. Except it was the man whose voice I was listening to in the podcast at that moment. Ripped my freaking mind apart. I tweeted him later that night, and he confirmed he used to live there, but like 10 years prior. Insane. I was playing D&D with 7 people and 6 of us all rolled a 20 at the same time, because the entire party got an attack of opportunity. I once saw, and was part of, a legitimate 2-hour roll at a craps table, and won about $13. 000 or $14. 000. Everybody that plays craps likes to talk about the 1 or 2 hour rolls they see regularly, but in reality, a legit roll that lasts even an hour is very rare. I had sex. Well, I got into /AFK teammates and League of Legends for 40 games in a row. My best friend just got married and was starting his life. I had just landed a good job and rented a new apartment. We moved in the same apartment complex right beside each other without even mentioning where exactly we were moving to each other. Lol. That just genuinely made me happy. Band practice. High school. My buddies arrive, laughing, with big stoner-sized bags of Taco Bell, and tell me, oh, you should have been there. There was this lady with the gnarliest mustache I've ever seen. Haha. I say, I actually have an aunt with a pretty impressive mustache. She lives 2 western states over though. Finish band practice and head back to my mom's. Sure enough, who's there but my uncle and mustachioed aunt. I didn't know you were in town. Oh, we were just passing through your area and decided to stop in after getting some lunch. At Taco Bell. Yeah. How did you know? I met a girl online during my senior year in high school who lived 2 hours away in the next state over. We dated for a couple months, and in that time she never really met my friends, since I was always visiting her instead of the other way around. We broke up and went out separate ways, but more than a year later, in the summer after my freshman year of college, my high school friends and I spent a weekend in a lake house that happened to be close to where my ex lived. I called her up and she, along with a few of her friends, came by on the Saturday night to party with us. It was a genuinely fun night of drinking, games and grilling. Many pictures were taken on those disposable Kodak cameras. One of her friends was extremely flirtatious and took a lot of pictures hugging me and my friends. My ex and her friends were a year behind us, so they were all going into college that fall. When flirty girl got to school, she hung pictures from that night on her dorm room wall. She also met her roommate for the first time, since this was before the days of social media. Her roommate happened to be from my hometown. She was the girlfriend of one of my friends who was at the lake house party and who had taken pictures with flirty girl. So my friend's girlfriend goes to college, meets her freshman roommate, and the first thing she sees is pictures of her boyfriend wastardly hugging this person she just met. And the only reason those pictures exist is because I met a different girl online nearly 2 years earlier. Make sure to like and subscribe so we can watch together.